Yo guys, welcome back to the channel. In this video, I will be installing and testing the new IFS 2 kit from Element, and I'll be putting that in my Gatekeeper. So stay tuned if you want to check it out. Okay, so I'm not going to get too into the install of this. I'll show you some of the key parts of it, but overall, I think it comes with a pretty good instruction manual here. So I'm not going to kind of bore you guys with all the details of the install. If I find anything that's kind of noteworthy, an issue or anything like that, or something that's not in the instructions, I will make a note of that. But I'll just kind of briefly go over a quick overview of the install. But I mainly wanted to get out and do some running testing with this truck with the new IFS. I've driven this thing quite a bit with the straight axle in the front, so I'm curious to see how it changes. So I was kind of inspired by the new Zool 2 that came out with the IFS front. So I was considering buying one, and then I'm like, you know what? I have essentially the same truck here with the Gatekeeper body on it, and I could just pick up an IFS 2 for $100, throw that in the front, and I'm going to kind of have essentially the same truck overall. So I do have a brush system in this. I have the Hobby Wing 1080 G2 set up in here, and right now I'm just running a Holmes Crawlmaster Sport in here. I picked up a different brushed motor just to test out. I would like to pick up a little extra wheel speed, seeing as how this is going to be, I don't know, like more of a U4 style or almost like a pre-runner style truck now that it has independent front suspension. And I don't know. I just figured try something a little bit different with this thing. So I'll be curious to see how it turns out. And yeah, just see how the handling compares to the solid axle front. So let me get this thing unboxed and I'll show you guys what we got going on. So right off the bat, let me show you guys this. I always love Element's packaging. If you own anything that's Element, you know that the inside of their boxes always have some really cool features. I do like how this kind of comes on a display stand here. It's all pre-assembled and ready to install. And you got kind of like this cool like crate packaging going on in here. It does also come with, so the inside of the box here actually has all of the makings for a pinball machine. So you can cut out all these pieces and they fit together, and it ends up being a cool looking pinball machine, which then you could use in a scale garage. So yeah, if you guys have purchased any other Elements, like that's the inside of one of the boxes. I forget what that was. Maybe I think it was from my Gatekeeper actually. And then they come with cool little cutouts for toolboxes and stuff. So the pinball machine will be a cool collection for that. And I just have this set up on the shelf, but I think it looks cool. I really like that about Element. Okay, so very nice looking kit here. I was hoping that these were just removable, almost like jack stands. I guess you can trim them. They're actually attached to this kind of plastic uh, temporary frame that supports this whole thing, which is going to be removed. So the rest of it just bolts onto the metal frame on the vehicle. But I guess you could trim these off and kind of repurpose them as little jack stands for something on your display. So that's kind of cool. I might mess with that. Shocks feel nice and smooth. I don't know. These are, I guess, like the team shocks. They're all aluminum. I'm going to see if I can use those. I don't see why I couldn't. I'm not sure. This does use a little competition style spring on here. I'm not sure yet. I'll see. I'll see if they are kind of cross compatible there, and just see which ones end up working out better. I do like this nice little the steering rack system that this has is very interesting and different. So yeah, let me get the start tearing apart the old setup there and try to get this thing installed and show you guys how it works. I'm going to take an overall weight on the vehicle too. I'm curious to see the weight difference. So let me do that before anything, and then once everything is installed back in place, I will reweigh it and see what the difference is. Okay, so complete truck, no battery, 6 pounds, 1 ounce. Okay, so first step, I'm just going to remove all these links. I'm going to pull the front drive shaft out. I'm going to remove the servo, just disconnect everything from the steering linkage, pull the wheels off, and that's it for now. Okay, so I have everything stripped off the front, the links, the panhard mount, everything, the servo mount, the whole deal. I removed these little chassis plates and jack stands, faux jack stands to here. So Yeah, and just bolted on this additional skid plate onto the bottom. The instructions pretty straightforward so far. So let's see how this thing mounts up to the chassis here. Okay, so I like that this kit comes with a nice steel servo horn as well. Uh, I think that's going to hold up extremely well. And pretty simple install. Essentially, it's just you reuse your shock tower screws on both sides. And then, I guess I'm going to reuse the screws that go into, originally went into the links, but now we're going into this additional skid plate. That's a very nice skid plate under there too. So let me button this thing up, get the truck turned on, and we'll see how this thing goes. But so far, it's an incredibly easy install. So the only thing I'm noticing, if you see how close this link comes to the steering rack, I noticed a slight bit of resistance when it's hitting. So I think it's just more of an issue with how low this servo sits. This is a Flash Hobby direct power servo. I'm just going to put a spacer onto here just to lift this up, just so this link, the steering link here, is more level and it's not going to hit into that. I don't think it's a big deal, but just to kind of level everything off, I'm just going to put, I have these little, I don't even know where these came from. Maybe they came with this kit. I don't even know, but they're just little spacers that fit under the servo. So I'm going to install these and see if that alleviates the problem. That definitely solved the problem. This link is nice and level now. And you'll see just this thin little spacer under the servo here. It definitely felt like it was kind of binding a tiny bit because it feels nice and smooth now. So you get this thing fired up and get the wheels back on it, and we'll see how it works. So these screws here were originally holding this front pivot plate for my Gatekeeper onto the bumper mount. Those just needed to come out so that the skid plate could go kind of flush up against that bumper mount, and then those same screws went back in. These are the same like grub screw type screws that go back into the skid plate here. Screws here that mount the skid plate to the IFS2 come with this kit. This kit does also come with some extra rod ends and these ball studs. I don't know if they're just spares for what's used in the kit, but I don't see any reason to use them at this moment. So that's pretty much it. Things worth mentioning. I mentioned at the beginning of the video I was going to try to use these team shocks here. They are very nice aluminum. These are 90 mil. The ones on the kit here are 95, so that's a no-go. I don't think there's any type of limiting spacer in here. I'm not positive on that, but I don't think they are interchangeable. And not crazy about the plastic hexes. I kind of do wish it came with metal hexes like what was originally on my Gatekeeper, but other than that, it looks very solid. So I'm just going to run it like this for now and just see what happens. I could always swap these out. I do have other metal hexes lying around, but let me just slap it together like this and give it a shot, and we're going to run it kind of out of the box and see how it works. Okay, so complete truck with the IFS2, 6 pounds, 2 1/4. So it looks like it gained 1 1/4 ounces by changing over to the IFS, which is surprising. I don't know. I kind of figured there's a lot of stuff that we removed here. I mean, these, of course, aren't part of it, but yeah, I guess it's just a little bit heavier. Maybe the extra skid plate and stuff. So, but hey, it's up front at least, and it's not that much weight. Okay, so here we have it, guys. Really happy with this install. It was super easy. It really was not confusing at all. The instructions really don't cover every single step. They don't tell you what screws you need to reuse, but it's very simple. Just reset my endpoints because they were a little bit off, of course, because it's a different length horn from what I was using, and the whole geometry is totally different. But you can see this Flash Hobby direct power. Got super nice power and speed, and pretty inexpensive. I love these servos. Overall, I think it looks super cool. I mean, on the Gatekeeper especially, just because it seems like this type of rig would have independent front suspension, so I'm also running, so with the 1080 G2, I do have remote adjustable drag brake, if I can remember what, there you go. So now my drag brake is off, and I can crank the knob and have full drag brake, and I could set it anywhere in between. If I want kind of half drag brake, I can set it. So that's going to be a super cool feature for this truck, because I do want to power this thing up a little bit so I can get a little more wheel speed, so I can drive it a little more like a U4 style or a like a pre-runner type truck. But I still want the ability to do some good low speed crawling. So I'm going to mess around with different motor options. I just picked up, and I am going to leave it brushed for now. I just picked up this 5-slot Surpass 12-turn motor just to try. I don't know if it's going to have any more wheel speed, but we'll give that a try, and I'll have some running video for you right now. Okay, so on to some running video here after the install. Went straight to the hard stuff. This is one of the hardest lines in the area that I'm crawling in today. So decided to give it a shot. I didn't really think it had, the possibility of making this, but wanted to try it anyway. And I think with maybe a little more added weight up front and just working at it, figuring out a line, it may be possible. This is a super difficult climb here because of the little overhang that sticks out from the right side, catches your tires and forces you off the edge on the left. So I've only made this climb with like two low CG rigs ever, and I don't know, we'll see. I'll have to revisit that one once I do a little work to this thing. But overall I was impressed. I think having the sway bar on the rear does actually help in certain situations. So I've always kind of liked that about this rig, especially a spot like this. I was experimenting with a sway bar on my G-Speed a while back, and it made this section here easier. Just kind of kept it flatter when you have to float a tire over a crack or something. So I think this with the trailing arm rear suspension with the sway bar, I think it has certain advantages. And it definitely makes it a very different driving experience, having the trailing arm rear and the independent front. I think it's a good combination. I think it's kind of different enough from any other crawler or trail truck that I have that just makes it a little more interesting to drive. So as far as abilities, it definitely lost some ability as far as side hilling goes. Of course, I had to throw in some slow-mo here, some jumps. That's just enough wheel speed for it to kind of be fun, like scale jumping. But yeah, so it lost some ability in terms of side hilling, and part of that could just be due to the weight of the front. The front solid axle does weigh a good amount, and it's all one piece. It's all connected. With the independent front, you're talking about each wheel is separate from the other, so you start to float a wheel in the air, and it's really just the weight of one wheel that's trying to pull that corner down. So what I'm thinking is getting a little brass on the front. I did find out, you'll see toward the end of this video, I do have an issue with one of the knuckles, and luckily I figured out that SSD makes brass steering knuckles for the IFS 2, so I went ahead and ordered those. They add about, I think it was somewhere around like 56 grams a piece to each wheel, so or each axle, but I think that's going to help a lot. So hopefully I'll have to get another video, do some more testing once I get those installed. Also, I noticed, so with the front suspension, the shock springs are pretty well tuned for the weight of this vehicle, in that it does get a decent amount of sag when it's just sitting with the battery in and sitting on a level surface. It sits just about right. It's maybe 50% sagged. But when the front starts to unload, it does it, I think, almost easier than with the solid axle front. So what I'm thinking is maybe some like tie down straps or like shock straps. I usually use like the stretchy hair bands and just run it around the shock just to help pull the front of the vehicle down when you're on a steep climb, just to kind of like hold it, keep it from fully unloading off to the back. And I think that should help a lot. So I'm going to experiment with that a little bit. Overall though, in terms of like climbing ability and getting up steep things, this truck has always impressed me. In that it was able to do things I just didn't think it had in it. and then it just walks right up. So it continued to do that. There were definitely a couple spots where I didn't think it was going to make it, but it did. Perfect example right here. This is a very steep climb, and I tried coming around this little kind of ledgy part there. I tried it a few times. It just wasn't really working out, and I didn't want to waste too much time. So I decided just to try and tackle it head on, and I was able to do it. So in terms of just overall abilities, it hasn't really lost much. It's definitely different. It is different to drive this with the independent front suspension, and I like it. I like it for that reason mainly, because it's a different experience. You have to kind of choose your lines a little differently, maybe be a little bit more careful side hilling. Hopefully that improves with a little weight up front, even though this did add just over an ounce of weight. That is, I would guess it's mostly sprung weight, whereas the straight axle was mostly unsprung weight. So I think that's a big difference too, with the front end of this just seeming to be a little bit lighter, or just driving like it's a little bit lighter than it was. So I think just having those brass steering knuckles is going to help a lot. But overall, a lot of fun. Had a lot of fun driving this. The motor I installed, this Enduro motor, did not have the best drag brake, and I think it's a little bit of a sacrifice because I did pick up some wheel speed. I also geared it up 2 teeth. I'm running stock spur, and I went up to a 23 tooth pinion. So that never helps with the drag brake, in terms of just leverage of the drivetrain over the motor. So it wasn't horrible. I noticed it was worse in reverse, and I'm actually wondering, because I do have my reverse set to, I think, 50% on this, and I'm almost wondering if that has an effect on the drag brake, because the drag brake going forward was actually pretty decent. I didn't have a lot of complaints, but in reverse, it really rolled back quite easily. So I'm going to try to bump up my reverse in the ESC setting up to 100%. and see if that has any effect on the drag brake. I'm not sure if it would. And then if I do want to limit my reverse, I could just do it through the controller. I am running my FlySky GT5 6-channel on this. And you'll see I have a winch lead up there. I went ahead and installed a Reef's servo winch that I had lying around. And it was always my intention to put it in this truck, but with the stock 3-link up front, the panhard bar would hit into the spool, and I would have had to have spaced it up pretty high, and I don't know, I just never really got around to doing it because it seemed like it was going to be a pain and wasn't really going to fit right. But with the IFS 2, it was super easy to put a servo winch in this. I just put it so that the spool was toward the rear of the vehicle, and there's plenty of room down there for the spool. Everything lined up perfectly. Just the front bumper mount does have a little hole in the center. And for the Gatekeeper body, you have this little pivoting front section of the cage, and there's a little mount. So I just had to drill a little hole through that and just run the winch line through that and up and over, and it's perfect. And I already had a 6-channel radio in there, so it worked out great. I mean, it was the easiest winch I've ever installed. So I don't know how much I'll use it, but it is cool to have. I had it lying around, and I was just waiting for a vehicle to go in. So this was by far the easiest. So yeah, overall, I like it. I gotta say, it was worth doing. Especially now I have the stock axle I took off is going to go onto my Capra, which I stole the axles from the Capra for my other low CG build. So my Capra is sitting without axles. So picked up another Element axle kit, and I'll build up a rear with that. So I have the front. I'll get the Capra back together with probably with like a 3-gear trans or something. So overall happy with this purchase. Didn't really have any other complaints until you'll see coming up soon. I was jumping this truck here and there, so I don't know if maybe I hit something on a landing kind of hard and kind of started to crack the one knuckle on the front, but you'll see here in a second. I was just driving at an obstacle almost exactly like that. It was a little bit of an overhang, and I just gave it a little throttle, and all of a sudden I just saw the front driver wheel just turn in. Okay, so this is really lame. I literally just tried driving into just up through these little rocks, and there's a bit of a step, so I kind of pushed the front wheel into this a bit and gassed it, but I mean, nothing crazy. I didn't hit it hard, and all of a sudden the front wheel just turned in, and the damn knuckle broke. So just ripped this right off. So that's pretty lame, you know, nothing that I would expect to break driving it like I was driving it. So I don't know if someone makes aluminum knuckles for this. I'm gonna have to look into it, because now I'm not sure if these are gonna hold up. I mean, I really wasn't driving this thing all that hard. Not hard enough. I would not have expected this. That sucks. Oh well. Game over. Yeah, seeing how thin this little section of plastic is here does not give me much confidence that this isn't gonna continuously happen. Yeah, so as I mentioned earlier, went online real quick, found out that SSD does indeed make some brass steering knuckles for the IFS2, so good to go. Stay tuned, guys. I'm going to have a video on these coming up soon. Later.